Well, thank you all for being here, and happy Black History Month. And as Karen said, and you're all welcome also to, I have these wonderful wristbands of my website, blackhistoryeveryday.com. And there's a new Black History fact every day, and I'll make sure that you all get them. But thank you for being here to kick this off. I'm very honored to be here. I know Ms. Brown and I know Michelle very well. I just met Ron. I feel very close to him, even though, let me just say, he did admit that he is a Patriots fan, but that's okay, I have to say that.
But in my defense, I have to say that I come by it honestly. I lived in Boston for a decade.
Okay,
So
we're
I'm
gonna
not a Johnny come lately. To the Patriots.
we're gonna forgive you for that as well.
It was my college days. I was very impressionable.
Okay, yes, and he didn't inhale. So, as mentioned, we are going to record. This is going to be recorded, so you'll have opportunity. So, and then if you have questions, let me know. I will come to you. You can ask questions. This is this amazing group of people here. So let's just start out, and we're just going to go down the line starting out with Ms. Brown. First of all, in your opinion, in terms of the work that you do and what you've seen, what do we need to do to have our children succeed?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. They
Here we go.
they must be given a level playing field, and when I say that, I mean number one, qualified teachers. If you notice, most of the teachers in the Black and the low-income communities are normally students right out of college. They are almost like a trainee. And then they need decent books, computers. You go into Brookfield Park, all of the schools out in the East Oakland area. Those books maybe from 1979, 1980. And to top that, number one, they're not coming from the best environment. The lack of resource, the breakdown in the family, all of these things weigh heavily on our students. And as community leaders, as a parent, as individuals, we should stop talking and downing these kids and start saying, you know what? I raised my child and he or she came out very well. What can I do to help some community child? Because until we have everyone educated, we all will suffer.
Excellent, thank you. Ron, same question.
My thoughts on this were boiled down basically to children of color, Black kids especially, need everything every other kid needs. They need stable homes. They need supportive parents. They need the logistics in the school place. They need the teachers. It's not that their needs are, so completely foreign that they can't be addressed. It's a big question, it's a complex answer, and various people try to address one part because that's what you can do. You can do one thing. Opportunity is wonderful, but if a child doesn't have the means to realize that opportunity, how much of an opportunity is it? And that's it.
Yeah. Thank you. Michelle.
I appreciate how you said that each of us or everybody can do one thing. As long as we all do something, as a village, it takes a village to raise children, to raise all children. And I think in terms of Black children in the schools, what I'm seeing is that there are teachers and others that have lower expectations. And I say, have the high expectations that you have for all children. And kids need to also see themselves mirrored. They need to see their lives mirrored. They need to see themselves in the literature. They need to see themselves displayed in the artwork, the posters on the wall. They need to see each other I happen to be at a school that is predominantly white, and we have a lot of, I'd say an array of biracial children and white children and some black children. And I see, just as Lisa Delpit in her article, Why Are All the Black Children Sitting Together in the School Cafeteria, that they're drawn toward each other. They're drawn toward others who look like them. And when they don't have that, we need to provide in other ways. We need to provide them with experiences through film, through the literature, and also acknowledging them for who they are and taking them from where they are and making sure that we keep our expectations high for all children. I think that's really important, is not to look at them as other. And othering them is making them feel like they are others. Because if you treat a child from that point of view of, oh, poor you, let me see what I can do to help you, they're going to start internalizing what you're putting out to them. And so you need to put out that strength, the higher bar, and help them to see that that's who they are.
Hold the mic, Michelle. I have a follow-up question for you. Can you tell us about the work that you do with the Black Teacher Project?
Black Teacher Project is an affinity group for Black educators. And it's in Oakland, but now they also have one in New York. And there may be another one forming in somewhere in between. And what I'm getting from Black Teacher Project is I'm feeling personal empowerment as one of the isolated Black educators in the area. And especially being at the school that I'm at, I was the only Black teacher for so many years. And then we started pulling in more Black teachers, trying over the years, but retention is really difficult. And being part of Black Teacher Project helps me to see ways of attracting teachers and helping to hold them and helping to nurture them and helping to see the power of each other, the strength in each other, building us up and seeing what they're doing in their schools and how we can replicate it amongst our different schools, successful programs, and also strategically thinking about, oh, if Joey's having this issue, how do you address that? What's your take on that? So getting input from each other and helping each other just to be strong as a community, and going back to it takes a village.
Great, thank you. And Ron, tell us about your organization and the work that you do.
Well, the Academy of Alameda is a K-8 charter school that started 10 years ago. We just had our second 5-year renewal process approved by the AUSD board. I was a parent at Chipman Middle School, which was a great but struggling school in the West End that, because of the political climate at the time, was faced with being closed by the state, having our kids shipped out, or having the school closed and our kids shipped out, or having our entire faculty fired and new people brought in. The district and parents and teachers and community members got together and we formed a charter school to address the needs of our students. And it has been a wonderful 10 years. It's not been a perfect 10 years. We have improved every single year. We look at what we're doing. We self-assess every single year. And as you said, we struggled with the diversity of our staff, and we know that we need that because we're a diverse school. The Academy is one of the top 5 most diverse charter schools in the state of California. Wow. And there are a lot of needs for all those kids, and that's a big thing to take on, and that's what we've been doing. And it's as I said, it's gotten better every year, better results. Our families love us. We are a K-8 school. All of our middle school parents say, when are you going to start a high school? Are you going to start a high school next year when my kid's in 8th grade? Not yet. You know, we are working to close the opportunity gap with our students. And when we feel that we have, I don't know that we will eliminate it, but made some significant progress and have it be replicatable, then we'll consider other schools. But right now, we're doing what we're doing. We're doing it well, and the plan is to do it better next year. And that's for all kids. I'm a volunteer, and it's been 10 years of meetings and meetings and meetings. But as I said, my kids went there. When my kids graduated and went to NSNL, everyone thought I was going to leave the board. It's like, well, no, that's not. I'm not on the board for my kids. I'm on the board for our kids. We are Alameda. We are a community. And that's why I still do what I do.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, you are legendary in what you have done. Tell us about your foundation. And you know one of my sheroes. Tell us about your foundation and why you started to do the work that you do.
Let me just back up a little bit and maybe you understand. I grew up in Mississippi picking cotton. My father was one that believed that you live, ate, and breathe, you was going to contribute to the family. And it was the hardest job. So I used to pray, God, get me out of here. I'll do whatever you want me to do. Get me out of Mississippi. I'm tired of picking cotton. Don't make a promise to God if you don't want to keep it. Went into real estate in 1987, one morning around 9 o'clock, what I did every morning, leave the office and run get me a Pepsi and a bag of peanuts. That's all I wanted that day. And a little girl, 7, 8 years old, stopped me and said, lady, would you give me a quarter? I had $5 in my hand, and I said to her, I'm going to the store. You can go with me. She and I went into the store, and I'm waiting for her to get chips, can or whatever, and the first thing she picked up was a loaf of bread, Wonder Bread. And when I looked at her, she like froze, and I said, no, baby, get whatever you want. She got bologna and cheese, came to $5.86, and I didn't have the money to get my peanuts and soda because I only had $5. But it was a store that I had gone to, religiously. And so Al said, no, he gave it to me. So we left the store, and I began to speak to her. I said, do you go to school? And in a little soft voice, she said, sometimes. I said, well, where's your mother? She said, home. And she almost froze, so I didn't say anything else to her. Went back to the office, and my broker said to me, Miss Brown, what happened? And I began to tell him. He said, well, you did what you could. My brother has always been my hero, religious, so that I couldn't wait to get home that evening. We didn't have cell phone back in 1987. So I called him and I told him, he said, well, Ori, you did what you could do. He said, let it go. But I couldn't. I would go to bed, and she was my vision. I got the telephone director, and I called Brookfield Elementary School, and they told me the principal was Mrs. Peaks. And they put her on the phone, and I asked if I could come and meet with her, and she said yes. And I went over and I told her what had happened. She said, well, we probably have 3 first graders here. Let's go to the classroom. So she was not in the first classroom, Mrs. Waters. Went to the next one, Mrs. Finch. She was not there either. So she said, give me your number. When all of my first graders are here, I'll call you. And so a secretary called me one morning and said all of their kids was there. So I'm excited. Jump in my car. I don't know what I was working, but I jumped in my car and I go to Brookfield. Get to the first class. She was not there. So I'm happy now because I know she got in the next class. They only have 2. Get in the second class. So I'm scanning her. I'm looking for her. She was not there. And the principal looks up at me and say, who are you? And I said, I'm Orly Brown. She said, the child is not here. And I said, well, can I adopt a class? She said, can you do what? I said, may I adopt a class? She said, do what? I said, send them to college. I don't even know where it came from. I don't. She said, lady, I don't know who you are, but we have to do a background check. We got to do all this stuff. And I'm standing there, so I gave all of my information. It was Dr. Young, who was the superintendent at Oakland at the time. So I guess maybe a month went by, and Carolyn called me one morning. She said, "Miss Brown, can you come to the class?" I said, "Sure." So I go over to the class, and Mrs. Peak stand up. She said, "So which class do you want?" I said, "Give me the one that you don't think will succeed." And I went back to my car, and I've never been so nervous in all the days of my life. I get in my car, and I'm just shaking. I have made a commitment to send these kids to college. I'm making $45,000 a year. I'm just in real estate. I'm a little agent. I started praying. I said, "Well, God, it's me and you." And every week I was at that class because I wanted to see the little child. And 12 years went by, scuffing. I would take them out we'd go milk cows. I did everything to try to enlighten them, to try to give them what they was not getting at Brookfield. And in 1999, 19 out of 23 of my babies graduated and went to college.
Yes.
That other class, 4 kids graduated.
Wow.
And I just knew then, this is it. I'm sending these kids to college and I'm finished. But there was the biggest outcry. CNN, Oprah Winfrey, Diane Sawyers. I get to my office one morning, all of these reporters. And I said to Mr. Lowe, how do I get out of the back door? I'm not going out there. I've never seen anything like this. And he said, "Well, Miss Brown, go out there and go through the next lot." He said, "But how you going to get home?" I said, "I don't know. I catch a cab," because I wasn't going to get my car. I left, and Dennis Richmond, I never forget, he stayed angry at me for years because I would not talk to them. It wasn't about the media. It was about these kids. I wanted to see, given the opportunity, given the resource, doing all that I can do and bringing in resources, if we gave these kids what they needed, would they be able to succeed? And of course the answer is yes. 19 went on to college. And they didn't just go to no little mediocre college. They was at Columbia too. One was at Morehouse, Spelman, Clark, Atlanta. So, and I even had one to go to Alcorn in Mississippi, where I was from. So it was truly a challenge. There was times that I would go home and I would cry because I would call parents to try to get them to come to a meeting. They'd tell me I have to go to the laundromat. They didn't have the time, and I wanted to say, "This is your child, ma'am." But I would always tell myself, I didn't adopt the parents, I adopted the kids. And so we made it through. And when they graduated, just like I said, it was the biggest outcry. People come running and, continue to do it. We'll do this. Of course I continue, but they didn't do it. So it's been, this year be 32 years, and you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. And we have never missed the college payment. And we pay for room and board, tuition. We will give them 1 trip a year to the college and back that we pay for. And so I don't take any credit for it because I'm smart enough to know that a little black woman like me could not do all of this, but God did it.
Excellent. Thank you. Hold the mic because I've got a follow-up question for you, but thank you. Let's a round of applause for that. Thank you. First of all, how many students in college now?
We have 18 in college now.
Okay. And what's the total number of in 32 years?
82 have graduated from 4-year institution. Now we have some that have went to trade school. Have a couple of them that went in construction. We have one that is a fireman. So I always said to them, go to whatever college you want, be whatever you want to be. It's not about Mrs. Brown. Don't be what I want you to be. I don't have to live your life. But whatever you chose to do, I would try and support it. And so that's what we have done. Some of them that came to me and said, "Mama Brown, I don't want to go to college. College not for me. I want to go to trade school." Fine. We will send them wherever they want to go. But I spent 12 years with you. You're going to do something.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so now you bring up a very important point that I want all of you to address, is that of a role model. So what impact, and you are all role models, and I think that you all accept that. So what impact does a role model have in the success of our children?
You know what? It's very, very important. And we should probably want to say that mom and daddy should be your role model, but we are smart enough to know better than that. You will generally listen to mom and daddy last. You're going to listen to your friends, your peers, and everyone else. Mom and dad is the last one you want to hear about. And it was one of the things I made clear with parents, that don't ever get angry when they say, well, Miss Brown do this or Mama Brown does that. Don't worry about it. The role models out there have an obligation. And you can be a good role model or you can be a bad one. And I know probably lots of you guys probably don't like the person that I'm finna name, but I watched him grow. And that's LeBron James. I look at him because this is a young man that grew up without a father. And know lots about him, in contact with people that are about him, never been on drugs, have always been a role model. Just last year, built the school, and I really like that because they named the school The Promise, which is dear to my heart because my book is The Promise, and it's one of the things that I made the promise to those kids. So role models must be in the community. They are there for a reason. We pay money to go see these individuals play. We buy their sneakers. And so you cannot say, kid, don't watch me. Yes, we're going to watch you. And it's the tone that you set that will influence some child. You don't know this. Kids are very inquisitive. They like to watch people, and they like to emulate. And so they watch these role models, and that's what bothers me when you hear one say, well, I'm not a role model. Yes, you are. Whether you want to be or not, if your name is out there, you're a role model. And you can be a good one or you can be a bad one. And in my community, we have both. But I generally will say to my kids, you know, I've never been to a classroom where a kid will raise their hand and say, I want to be a dummy, I want to be a drug dealer, I want to be this. They want to be somebody. We fail them when we do not teach them how to succeed. These are kids. They are teachable if we take the time to teach them. And when I get an opportunity to talk to high-profile people like Damon Lillard, I tell him all the time, you know, these kids look up to you. Be there for him. Be there for her. You never know who's watching you. So leave the drugs alone. Be there for these young people.
Same question, Ron.
Oh, thank you. You know, for me, role models are not just the celebrities. They're the most prominent ones because they're the ones we see every day. You turn on TV, you go to a movie, you're on the internet, you see these people, you see other people talking about these people. My background was being the smart black kid in the class with 27 white kids. That was my education. I did not see myself mirrored in society. And that's a hard thing because what a role model does is they illuminate possibility. They show you there is something beyond the here and now, and hopefully they inspire you towards that. Even the ones that, as Ms. Brown said, the ones that don't want to be, that claim that they're not, they are, because they are out there, and we see them, and kids are sponges. They soak up what they see, and for me, part of the role of the role model is expand the child's horizons. It's not just, hey, you can do this thing in the neighborhood. It's, hey, you can go somewhere and you can go do something. And it doesn't matter what. If you're inspired athletically, artistically, academically, anything, any one thing that kindles that spark, that lights that fire for you, And that's what a role model is. That's what they should be. And our part is help someone get there. You can aspire to something, but if you don't have the means to get there, that's when you need the help. And role models, some do help, but that's not really their job as role models. Their job is, this is where you can go. See, I got there. You can get there. I'm a kid from the neighborhood, and I went to Harvard, and I got a degree, and now I'm teaching, or I've got my own small company, and we're making something you use in your home. You can do that. You can be an astronaut. Anyone can be an astronaut if you do the work. Our job is to get them into a position where they can do the work.
Thank you. Michelle, same question?
I see a role model as anyone who touches your life, and positively or negatively. And I think of my family as my role models. Growing up, I didn't see myself mirrored in society, in our community. I saw my parents. They were my immediate contact, and they were so huge to me, the things that my parents did and how much they had accomplished, and their parents as well, and the road that they've traveled to get to where they were and to bring me to where I am. So they were my role models. My teachers certainly weren't, except for there's one or two teachers I remember. My kindergarten teacher, who was a black teacher, Mrs. Williams. I even remember her name, and I was 5 years old. And that was my only black teacher. And so she was my role model. And then there was a high school teacher who looked at me and actually saw me. Besides that, I looked at teachers as stumbling blocks in some way, and I thought, I will never be a teacher. Here I am 26 years in, and I said, I will never be a teacher, because in 7th grade, one of my experiences was I was out in Pleasant Hill, all white junior high school, and the teacher was talking about slavery, and here I am sitting, shrinking at the topic, and she said to the class, well, you know, slavery was actually a good thing because it taught people skills and cultivated people that were savage and wild and had no grounding and no culture. And so I timidly raised my hand because my parents had taught me otherwise. And I said, there were so many great civilizations in Africa. There were scientists, and of course, I said it in my little 8th grade, 7th grade voice, whichever year it was. And but I wanted to be heard, although I was fearful to speak. But I did say that's not what I learned, and that's not the truth that I know. And she just looked at me and sort of brushed me off and continued with her quote unquote teaching. And so that was the first mark that showed me not to believe and not to trust what I was receiving from them. And it held my parents up even higher. And then I was really into drama in high school. I thought, okay, that's me. That's where I shine. I'll go into drama. And so I tried out for the play. I tried out for Lucy, and I was voted in. The kids loved me. They said, yes, she's the best Lucy for Charlie Brown. And then the teacher pulled me aside and said, well, we're going to be taking the show to other schools, and it just won't be believable for you to be Lucy because, Lucy's white. And I thought, wow, I'm struck down again. So I never took drama after that in high school. As an adult, I've pursued it here and there in little ways and had fun with it. But I thought how that could change the course of someone's life, something like that. and how role models are so important. And I said, no, I cannot take that responsibility of damaging someone's life like that. And then I had so many people around me saying, but you wouldn't damage their life. You wouldn't make that choice as a teacher. And you're such a good educator. You would be really good as a teacher. And I said, no, maybe I'll just go through the program and maybe substitute for a year while I really find what I want to do. Like I said, 26, 27 years ago. And so then I just started to gain the confidence because of how well I was able to relate to children. And I thought, I don't have to do damage because damage was done to me. I need to look at it from the other lens. I need to turn it around and say, if they can do that to me, I can do this for others. I can take the strength, the love, the beauty that a teacher can offer. And I'm not saying I'm a role model. I'm saying that people that touch other people's lives, they touch deeply. They can touch so deeply, especially children. And I think I am so glad I made that decision because I'm surrounded by so many wonderful teachers and then so many teachers who are learning how to listen. And I feel that through Black Teacher Project and through other teachers of color and also, white teachers as well, the ones that are quote unquote woke or just have a deeper understanding, just open eyes, are helping those who are still out there not understanding that it takes more than just the lesson plan. It takes looking into the child and looking and helping the child see themselves and really feeling them with heart and feeling them with love. And, love is the bottom line, and caring about them. So, role models are so important, and they can touch you from so many aspects of life. I mean, a 6th grader could be a role model to a 5-year-old, and that's a big responsibility. So obviously, I don't mean that written in stone, but for a 5-year-old, they see what they see and they take what they take, and it's so important to surround them with positivity and with messages that they are good and that they can do anything.
And you are a role model, and thank you. Thank you for being that. So you talked about it a little bit, Michelle, but and this is for all of you. We'll start with Michelle. But what made you succeed? What were the factors that helped you succeed to becoming from the Black youth that you were to the role model teacher that you are now?
Well, it all had to do with believing in me, others believing in me, and therefore me believing in myself. My mother was an educator, excuse me. She was a teacher and a counselor and a pupil personnel coordinator, the couple years that was in existence. She was a vice principal, a principal. And so watching her and the way that she related to people and knowing, and so many people said, oh, you look like your mother. So it's like, well, I can be like my mother. And so she was so impressionable to me. And my dad, too, he came from very humble beginnings in Texas. And they were sharecroppers. And he became a pilot in the Air Force and a major and a world traveler, and just so looking at where he came from and what he became, and my grandparents on my mother's side, just all these strong people in my family that I looked at. Her mother was a court stenographer. There were no Black court stenographers in those days. Her dad was the president of the YWCA in Washington, D.C. And to see that in my family just made me think, well, I have to do these. I have to achieve. I have to. And there was no doubt of me going to college. It wasn't, are you going to go to college? That wasn't a question in my family. It was just a given. It's like, where are you going to go? Not are you going to go? So it's the expectations. I think bottom line is having high expectations for your kids. Just expect the best.
Same question, Ron. What about your success?
For me, I think did come from, my mother was an educator, a teacher, administrator. My father was a police officer. And the expectation was always, go to college, get a good job, give them some grandchildren. And, and over the years, the importance of those, kind of changed, But for me, it was seeing people who were outside of the mainstream in a position of prominence. And I worked as I started tending bar in college, and I worked at a pretty nice place in Boston, and then I came out to the Bay Area, and the first thing I did was, I'll get a job as a bartender, and then I'll look around for some real work. And I worked at a fancy place in San Francisco, and I was the only black employee, and I won't name the restaurant, for 5 or 6 years. And, we're talking about a restaurant, bartending and waiting tables. Anybody can do that. But it was surprising for people that I was there. And I think that boiled down to their expectations of my cultural competence. That what would a black guy be doing in a Michelin-starred restaurant? Dealing with guests and handling money. I've always been in situations like that. I played hockey because everyone in my neighborhood played hockey. We had a lake 2 blocks this way that froze over every winter. We had a city park with a ice rink. The black kids, the white kids, the Colombian kids, we all played hockey. It seemed completely natural to me until I went to college. And again, I'm the only black hockey player that anyone has ever met. And there are black hockey players. There have been black players in the NHL. It's seeing people like that. That's what makes me, like I said, role models, they don't just illuminate, they inspire. They make you feel like, I can do that because someone else has already shown me the way. It's possible. It's not just, I want something different. I think you do need to have a way to go. You need to see a path, even if you're starting on this path and then you're going on this path and then you're doing that path. I think that part of the journey, just taking steps, makes you a better, stronger person. You realize that, yes, I can do this, and now I found this other thing and I can do that, and then I found this other thing and I can move to another part of the country and I can be who I feel I am meant to be. And that's how I've tried to live my life. And as much as all of my relatives wish I was back on the East Coast, they understand that California is home because this is where I came, even as a Patriots fan. I came and I found my adult life and I've lived it. And that's what I want for the kids at my school. Go find your life and go live it. And what I can do to help is what I'm going to do, and what you guys can do to help is what you should do.
Ms. Brown.
I'm not sure if I should take the mic or not because maybe I'm not successful And the role models that they have had, I never had them. I grew up out of a family of 14, my mother and father and 12 siblings. And as I said earlier, I prayed to get out of Mississippi. And my mother allowed me to go and live with my sister. Well, my sister had 8 kids. And after babysitting them for about 3 years, I decided that no, this was not for me. So at the age of 14, I put on some high heel shoes one day and I went and got me a job. And the lady said to me, "You sure look young." And I put my little hand on my hip and I said, "I'm 18. Because I was tired of babysitting and not being able to go to school. So I had no role models. I could not write my mother and tell her what my sister was doing because that meant a trip back to Mississippi and I wasn't going. So those role models eluded me. I did not have them. So I guess if I had a role model, it was God, because I never gave up and believed in that, okay, you know, and got me out of Mississippi. You didn't bring me here to babysit, so something better is at hand. And so when I became 18, I enrolled in day school and got me a job and worked during the day and went to school at night. Graduated from Laney with an AA and then got my bachelor's in science from the University of San Francisco. So again, no role model because there was only one in my family ever went to college and only one other one finished high school. But I found out for me, the more I give, the more that I get. And even taking a chance on giving those kids $10,000 a year when I was only making $45,000, I've noticed over the years, honestly, and I can raise my hand and say this, the more money I give, money comes from places that is just unexplainable. I have had over the years, even being in real estate, get calls and say, you know what, I'm selling my house and I saw you on the news, you're the lady working with the kids, I want you to sell the house. So I think when you try and do the right thing and try to help, and I always say young people and students, because you can give a kid a dime and they're happy as they can be. You can give an adult $100 and they say, "That's all you can give me?" So I spend my life trying to help young people be whatever they can be. And I often tell them my story because I don't want them to have to go through what I went through. It was only by grace. There have been many nights that I cried and said, this is not worth it. I really wished I was dead. Because, you know, working during the day, going to school at night, leaving one job, going to another one. But I don't know, look like when I would wake up the next morning, it was something saying, "Go ahead, sister, go on." And so the kids really made me become successful because I couldn't let them down. Now, I done went to the school and I adopted them. So I'm not going to let you down. You're going to college, no matter what I have to do. So if anything made me successful was the commitment that I made to my babies.
I think that's impressive. Yeah, no, well, I may not make her go in. Does anybody have any questions before we go on?
Yeah, I have a question. You talked about taking the kids out to milk the cows and stuff. Talk a little more about that.
Sure.
Getting them out.
I guess maybe in the 4th grade, I had went down to OUSD and wanted to get a permit. We got a bus, and there was a place in Manteca we had called. I grew up milking cows and feeding the chickens and all of these, so I wanted to expose them the things that they was not used to. I mean, they sat at the table in the morning, drank milk, and have no idea where it come from. And so I would charter a bus, and on the weekends, we would go down to most of the time down to Modesto and Manteca. And we would go to the farm and milk the cows, and some of them couldn't do it. They were running and didn't even know what the cows were. And then we would bring the milk back, and I would take it home. And, you know, you keep it for a few days, and you can churn milk and make butter. So on weekends, we had a big toast and butter party. And these was the things that I wanted to try and expose them to. Even then, back in the day when they was in the 10th grade, I took them to the Historical Black College. These was kids that had never flown before. We at the Oakland airport, and they said, "Mama Brown, where we are going," you know? And I never will forget, we was at Morehouse, went to Morehouse, and Corey had his hood up on his head. Corey and Jeffrey was the two that had talked about going to Morehouse. And this professor, Mr. Reed, came out there and he looked he said, young man, in Morehouse, you stand like a man and you look like a man. Corey must have threw that hood off and we tease him today. Corey is, 33? And even today, he would not wear a hoodie. So it's the influence and, you look up to these different people. So I wanted to expose them to more than 98th Avenue and to drugs and let them know that there's a world out there. And it's nothing wrong with being a farmer. You get 300-acre land, you can live real good and farm and make whatever you want to. So my thing was at least I could expose them to what I was used to.
I think that's great, and that actually was my question, but we have another question here.
You said you didn't have a role model,
No.
but still you succeeded and you did great and you are doing all this great work. What made you get going? Every day you said that you are working in the daytime and going to school at night. It's pretty difficult. It's tiring physically and mentally. And so what is it which made you get going?
I can tell you one of the things, it's not too many people I'm afraid of. It's not too many people I won't challenge, but it's one thing I won't do. I don't mess with God. Now, I know some people may not even believe it's not one, but I do. And standing in that cotton field, I did a many days standing there telling God, please get me out of Mississippi. God, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Well, I felt he wanted me to educate these kids. So once I made that commitment, no matter how tired I may have been when I left work, I knew what I had to do. I had to continue to work, continue to go, because I had 23 students that I was responsible for. They didn't come to me. I went to them and say, stay in school, work hard, and Mama Brown's gonna send you to college. So I had no other choice.
No, but before you had these 23 kids, when you were younger.
When I was younger?
Yeah, and you are working and going to school.
Uh-huh.
You said your faith in God
Yeah.
made you do all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And that faith in yourself
Mhm.
actually make you keep going there. How do you, there are so many children, they really want to do it, but they don't have courage to do it. And as you said, your faith made you do all these things.
Yeah.
But even they have faith in God, they don't, inside, they want to do it, but they don't have courage to do it.
She wasn't going to renege on her promise to God.
But not only that, sometimes you have determination. I have seen a brother and sister, certainly some of my kids, brother and sister, one is so focused, the other one you can't hardly get him up in the morning and go to school. The mother's calling me, Miss Brown, can you please come over here? He won't even get up, and I'll go over there, look, you got to go to school, baby. Got to go to school. One day he had got so bad I got in my car and I put him in my car. And I drove him down to Santa Rita Prison. And I got out and he said, Mama Brown, where we at? I said, this is where you're headed. If you don't turn your life around, this will be home. I said, now you have it good. You have your mother there and you have your grandmother's father wasn't in the home. I said, it's nothing that I won't do for you. But you know what? You got to make that step. You got to make it so. There are just some people, I think, in some way may be determined that they don't like the life that they was given, and they want to do better. And maybe I was one of them. Maybe that picking cotton, maybe that hot sun, maybe Mississippi. I don't know what it was, but I didn't want to be that little girl in Mississippi, and I didn't want to starve. So I was just focused to keep going no matter what. I was going, and I was going. So I was like the energized battery. You just keep going and going and going.
Ron, you were reaching for the mic.
Here it is.
Yes.
So I was just, while you were speaking, I was just thinking, and sort of in answer to your question, through my involvement with charter schools, and not being a trained educator, I've had to learn a lot of lingo. I think in my head, edu-speak. Educators speak in acronyms. They throw them around as if the rest of the world knows what they're talking about. And if I was going to operate in that atmosphere, I had to learn the language. One of the things that educators speak about this century is grit. And that is something that came out of the research. You know, you talk about how some kids on their own get up and do it. Some kids you got to drag kicking and screaming, and even then you turn your back and they're gone. Especially if you are coming out of a marginalized community where you don't have everyday role models of how you can live your life well and productively. It's hard. It's hard to go to school and study European history. Who cares? It's hard to do. And even if you try, you may not do well. You may not get good grades. And in studying students who do well, one of the characteristics that has been identified is grit. It's resiliency. There's an aspect of curiosity. You know, the positive outcome you want may not be right there in front of you, and you have to keep going and hopefully find it. And that's something that educators, parents, relatives want to engender in young people, but it's a non-tangible. So it's hard. You know, it's not like, okay, we're going to do our grit exercises today. You know, but that's what it comes down to. And some people have it in spades, and part of the challenge is how do we help engender it in other people when the world is telling them, don't put the effort in. It's not gonna, but it's not just, everybody wants something. But when the world as you perceive it tells you you're not gonna get it, not that you can't have it, but that you are not going to get it, you sigh a big sigh and you try less. And when you start trying less, you achieve less. And as educators, like, how do you need to be able to recognize that and counteract it. And that's hard. There's not, like I said, there's not a prescription for that. But I think that may be what the answer you're sort of searching for is like, it's grit. It's like, yeah, you know, she wasn't the only one who wanted to get out of Mississippi, but she did. And whether it's divine inspiration, whether it's someone local, a relative who says, get your ass up out of here, get going, you got a head on your shoulders, stop picking cotton. Wherever it comes from, that's what it takes.
I'll say one thing. I think one thing that inspired me was wanting to escape the lies that I felt were coming at me through history books, through teachers who didn't believe in me. My escape was escaping the suburbs. I know that people, claw their way into the suburbs, but I was clawing my way out of the suburbs. And I think with each nugget of truth that I found, it just inspired me and made me want to find out more. Just as Kiki has her website of Black History Every Day, that's something I weave into my classroom, is making sure that there's not just a Black History Month, but Black history is American history. It's all of our history. and that, weave that as well as other histories throughout the curriculum all year. And I don't teach from a textbook. I teach from research. Me and my coworker are just constantly researching and finding out new things, people's birthdays, and ways to weave that in, and to weave in the topic of who they are, maybe anchored in, oh, it's so-and-so's birthday, this is what they did, or whatever the topic is, finding out others who did it besides the mainstream white people that have been featured throughout history. One of the things that I'm really excited to be teaching my children next week is all these years I've been teaching about the New Colossus on the Statue of Liberty. My kids have learned the poem, The New Colossus, and it's a second grade thing. All the kids who go through second grade know the New Colossus, and we've taught immigration and how it was a gift from France because of us being a new country. And I found out recently, which I'm very excited to tell my children, and I'm weaving it into the context right now of how I'm going to be teaching this, since they learned the New Colossus at the beginning of the year and have learned already that it's welcoming immigrants, I'm about to tell them the truth, the reality that the Statue of Liberty was actually a gift because of emancipation from slavery. And I'm really excited about that, and I think that we just need to keep questioning the truth and keep our minds open, because those are the nuggets that inspire me. It's like, oh, there's another black person behind this, a black person behind that. Oh, well, there are so many things that we were not taught that I'm trying to make sure that I learn and that I teach from a very young age, that they should keep their eyes open. It's not always as it seems. It's not always what's written, but it's becoming more and more, I guess, revealed and unearthed. And there was an article, I wrote it down here. It was in the Washington Post, May 23rd, 2019, that talks about the new Statue of Liberty Museum. And it says that though millions of immigrants passed, the statue was unveiled in 1886. The plaque was added in 1903, but it was originally designed to celebrate the end of slavery, not the arrival of immigrants. And you see the broken chains at her feet. So a story was made around that about immigration, whereas the real story was about the freedom of slaves. And I thought, that is a huge part of history to not speak about and to have written differently about throughout time. And for me to have believed for all of these years. And I'm just itching to unleash this on the class. But just keeping, all these nuggets of reality that are huge. Are what inspires me in terms of to keep going, to keep learning, to keep knowing, and to keep releasing the truth.
How many of you had heard that George Washington, the first president of the United States, had wooden teeth? How many have you heard that? How many of you believe that he had wooden teeth? Okay, you do? Okay. I just wanted to bring up, there's a book that is actually being released on February 4th that I just reviewed. It's called Prejudicial, and it covers all of the presidents as they relate to black people. All 45 presidents as they relate to black people. And of course, 12 of the presidents of the United States owned slaves. George Washington being one of them. George Washington did not, in fact, have wooden teeth. He did have false teeth. He got his teeth from his slaves. So that's one fact that I never heard growing about. And Helena's looking at her children. Do your children know that? Did you know that? So I recommend that as a book, and I reviewed it, and just as a shameless plug, the review will be on kikipost.com on the 4th. It will also be on the Progressive magazine. I had a final question for all of you, unless somebody else has another question. I hope I haven't. Helena, yes.
I do. Thank you all. kids are in public school here in Alameda, and I just appreciate the conversation. I'm curious how you feel about the state of young black kids in Alameda, and how, if you are optimistic, if you are, and just as a relatively new parent in the school system, I'm just curious what you all think.
Great question. Ron?
As the panel's resident Alameda parent, we had our first child was born in San Francisco, and we immediately left because of the school situation and because I wanted my kids to be able to ride their bikes to school like I did when I was a kid. Almost every day from kindergarten on. That's what we did as a family. Well, not as a family. We did that through elementary school, and then they were done with us, and they wouldn't be seen in public with their mother and father, so they rode by themselves. Alameda is a very diverse city. The demographics are changing, and it can vary widely depending on where you are in the island, on the island and Bay Farm. I can say that everyone I've met in Alameda embraces the idea of diversity. Not everyone lives a life that embraces diversity. Our school district has a slogan of "Everyone belongs here." I have seen that school financing is not equitable across the whole island. I have seen that there are programs financed at some schools by the PTA, by the parents, that are not financed at other schools whose parents can't afford to give that much. I know that there has been resistance to the PTA's sharing funding because we brought that up 15 years ago, maybe? So it's, I'm really happy I raised my children here. I love this city. I plan on dying here. And I say that, I know I talked about being from Boston, but really, I'm a homeboy from Brooklyn. I am a native New Yorker. I grew up in a bad neighborhood. I went to school with, kids who, you're either hiding your money in your socks, but you always kept a quarter in case one of the bigger kids was gonna take your money from you, you can give them a quarter. Kids who, you put one of your dad's razors in your socks in case you got jumped by the kids, really, who lived like 2 blocks away, but, things were very territorial there. And I came out here, and I love it here. My boys love it here. I went to 5 different elementary schools. My kids are still friends, and they're 18 and 22. They're still friends with kids they knew in preschool. I couldn't even tell you what preschool I went to. But I will share this. My son's biracial. He changed schools in 3rd grade. He's at a new school, in like October, I think. Playing on the play structure, and a black kid who he didn't really know, comes up to him and, they're kind of talking and says, "What are you?" My son is mocha skin colored, 300 freckles, big curly hair. Didn't have a context for that question. He didn't know what the kid meant. So he thinks about it and he goes, well, I'm a boy. Comes home and he talks to me about this, and I'm kind of laughing. And I said, well, that's not what he meant. He was asking about your ethnicity. And it's so not until 3rd grade that my son developed any awareness of ethnicity. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I told him, it's like, he wasn't being hostile. It's just like, he's looking at your freckles and your skin color, and he doesn't know if you're black or white or Middle Eastern or what. That's all he was asking. I was like, oh, okay. That is what it's like for black kids here. I've not seen any kind of animosity at all. But there is, I think, many, if not every, black person in America, at least if you have ever gone to school or worked in a predominantly white environment, have encountered curiosity, which is not necessarily a bad thing, although it can become a tiresome thing. For your kids, one thing from my past, in college, I had a friend who was somewhere in the Midwest. She was like from Kansas or Missouri. She was white. She told me she had never, I was the first black person with whom she'd ever had a conversation. She'd seen black people on TV. She'd seen them working in stores and the postmen and the bus drivers, but she'd never sat down and talked with a black person. I said, oh, okay, great, I'm gonna go back to reading the paper. That was all her lead up. This was 1980. You can't tell now, but I was sporting the big Jackson 5 afro back then. She'd never seen an afro in real life, up close, and she asked if she could touch it. And I said, yeah, sure, you know. She's a friend of mine, she's not a complete stranger. And she couldn't stop touching it because it was so different from her hair. And I had to tell her, it's like, okay, I'm not a pet, enough's enough. But it's, if you're living as a minority in a community, you do need to be aware of curiosity and help direct it in a positive way as much as you can. And be aware of when that curiosity, even if it's well-meaning, can have a negative side to it. And that takes some maturity and some life, but to answer your question, it's a great place to raise your kids. Make them ride their bikes. My proudest moment as a parent was the summer when I told my kids, no more taxi service. If you're going anywhere this summer, get on your bike and go. We live in Alameda. The island is a 15-minute bike ride long. And they complained for 3 or 4 days. But then they realized, like, oh my God, I am independent. It's like, they had cell phones, they had keys, they had some spending money, and they had the freedom to ride their bikes anywhere they wanted. And life changed for us that summer. So.
My 19-year-old thinks that Uber is public transportation, but we have another question.
Yeah, then I'll throw a question out to any or all the three of you, and you're touching on a really interesting point. What are we telling children now that we're questioning that maybe race is a construct and a negative construct? At the same time, people have cultures, and we need to recognize that. and this is a huge question for me, everybody's throwing different opinions out about all of this, and so-called colorblindness, and recognizing past histories. What are we saying to the children, or what should we be saying to the children?
Okay, well, I've got the mic, so I'm going to speak to this first. Don't be colorblind, because colorblindness ignores history, and history is important. If to answer your question, I would say when you are trying to educate anyone, be patient. Nobody embraces change joyfully. We have our grooves. Whether it's our beliefs or our habits, we all have our grooves, and our grooves become comfortable. And if you're going to challenge someone's groove, if you're going to put a little bit of grit into their groove, they're not initially going to be happy. Be fearless. Honest conversations can be hard conversations. That doesn't mean that they're not worth having. Don't feel that you are going to change the world in that, or change their mind in that one conversation. If you can bring a new perspective into someone's consciousness, that is a huge step. And you may just need to let them think about that, let that percolate a little bit. It's okay for people to be different, but even in our differences, we are a community. There are different people here, and we are all here right now in this room, a community, coming from different places, going to different places, but we are a community, and we've had discussion here. And anything that you feel like you might have learned, pass it along. And if you're at a bar somewhere or a coffee shop, feel free to bounce it off of someone of color.
I have, unless either of you want to speak to that, do you? If you do not, I have a follow-up question. Okay, a follow-up question and a final question for those of you who are looking for kickoff time. And my 19-year-old 49er fan is right out there waiting for me. So from each of you, a final takeaway, and I'd say particularly we have two black youth here present, thank you. What is a takeaway in terms of what is needed for success for them? And you can address them directly if you want to. It's for them and it's for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's important to be proud of who you are and to know who you are. I think identity is really important. I think that asking questions, ask your parents questions about their parents, about, as much as they know that they can tell you. I know that we are more limited in the black community. Most of us living here are more limited in terms of how far we can trace back our heritage, unless we do genealogy studies and so on. But to know as much as we can and to embrace that and to have pride and to stand strong in who you are, I think is so important. I think I teach a lot of identity even in my second grade class, and I just want kids to look at themselves and know who they are and know as many parts of themselves as they can and know that all of that multiplicity equals who they are and that we are all different, even though there's the common strand that holds us up as human beings, and but knowing yourself as much as you can and continue to know yourself. So identity.
I'm going to say be as fearless as you can. Make friends. Speak out, especially in class. Even if you're not sure you know the right answer. Because it's not true that there are no wrong answers. There are a lot of wrong answers. But the way to find a right answer is to go looking for it. So just do that.
Good evening. First of all, believe in you. Believe in you, no matter what no one else say. Believe in you and know who you are. That's number one. Whatever you want, go for it. And don't let no one tell you can't get it. You know, the world is yours. And always look at them, the successful one, and know that whoever they are, they didn't get where they are on their own. And remember, we all have broad shoulders, and don't ever remember that you can walk on them. So be who you are, go for what you want, and don't let nothing stop you. The only thing that should stop you from getting what you want is death.
There you go.
That was one of the drop the mic moments. Thank you all very much. And then, as I said, I'd like to give anybody, oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add regarding what you were saying about the Statue of Liberty. Are you familiar with Dr. Joy DeGroot?
In fact, that's who I learned it from.
Yeah, Dr. Joy DeGroot.
I was at the People of
instrumental,
Color
in
Conference.
actually bringing that forward regarding the Statue of Liberty.
Yes.
And there was a lot of friction there. They didn't want to address it, and she persisted. And she's a renowned social scientist, an author and educator, and she's trained police departments all over the country, firefighters.
Right.
She's taught at Oxford and all over the world.
And widely
So her
published.
Her book actually is post-traumatic slave syndrome. And so she deals with the elephant in the room and, you know, not trying to erase any of us, but recognizing the glory and the beauty of us. And she also emphasizes, she's a researcher, phenomenal and scholar in research. But she also deals with, she's worked with a lot of the youth and the penal the correctional facilities, as well as on the university campuses, train, you know, students in med school and social work and all of that. But the book, if you can go on YouTube, Dr. Joy DeGroot. She's done phenomenal work, and yeah.
She's phenomenal. I was at the People of Color Conference, and she was the keynote speaker in December, and that's when I learned that information.
Yeah.
And it took a long time for anyone to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and blackhistoryeveryday.com.